Hello and welcome to another spiritual learning video. Today we're going to go over parallel existences, timelines, and reincarnation. Are there parallel existences to ours out there? If yes, can they be marked as a form of reincarnation? A well-known theory of rebirthing after physical death. Is reincarnation actually something much more fascinating, comprehensible only if we really open our minds? The evidence collected, as well as many proofs gathered by scientists and researchers, are overwhelming. There are so many children and adults around the world who were able to invoke some reminiscence from other existences. Amazingly, many of those claims were actually investigated and have been confirmed in great detail. However, this video is not about the question whether reincarnation exists or not. The physical mechanism of rebirthing is mysterious. However, if we postulate that at the core of our personality lies a kind of hidden consciousness energy, we may call that a soul, and when we take into account the natural law of conservation of energy, we may conclude that our consciousness cannot disappear with the physical death. On the contrary, it must continue to exist in another form. Today's science is much more fantastic than any fantasy worlds of fiction. In modern physics, there are still numerous unknowns, yet existing, sorts of matter, energy, or even additional space dimensions. Dark matter and dark energy, if summed up, they make more than 90% of the whole universe. And together with normal matter and energy, they fundamentally contribute to the configuration of our cosmos. So is it plausible then that our souls, or astral and spiritual worlds, essentially made of some form of those, yet unknown, forms of matter and energy? The majority of examined reincarnation cases show that people, especially children, usually remember some details from past existences that were happening many years before. But there are also many unexpected cases. Some people recall details from several lives that has been lived concurrently within the same time span. Moreover, there are cases of two or more people remembering the very same life, as though all of them had been the same person in one of the previous lives. And not only that, when some individuals are told to go back to a life from which the cause of their problems stem, they recall a life from the apparent future. More importantly, it still works. They are facing the trauma from that existence, and their problems in the current life is solved. How on earth can that be? Well, let's look at the nature of time. In fact, the process of reincarnation is far more complex than in the classical views of Eastern spiritual traditions. For example, the terms previous or future life are far from being reliable for depicting the truth. In a way, these previous or future lives are all simultaneous. Let me explain that. In accordance with the theory of relativity, time is interchangeable with space within the time-space continuum. And in the same way, time is only the fourth or first space dimension of that continuum. Our consciousness is moving steadily along that fourth axis of the space-time chart. This is actually giving us the impression that everything is changing. We are moving along that time axis, and everything else around us seems to be moving as well. Nevertheless, the whole fourth dimensional existence is fully stable in the 4D space-time continuum. Let's take an analogy of an old-fashioned movie projection. There is a movie tape on a reel that is moving steadily during the projection. It's being illuminated frame by frame, giving us the illusion of moving pictures on the screen. The film tape is a two-dimensional strip, and it's moving along the axis of an additional third dimension. In reality, we have a kind of three-dimensional film which moves along an additional fourth dimension of the space-time continuum. That film is illuminated by our consciousness, and we have the illusion of time. But that's not the whole truth, as we are not living in the block universe, which may be concluded from what I just stated. The 4D universe is stable, but it doesn't consist only of this timeline. In fact, there are innumerable embedded timelines within it. It's an unavoidable consequence of quantum mechanics. Namely, various experiments done with subatomic particles such as protons or electrons have shown that the behavior of matter and energy at the microscopic level is completely weird to our logical minds. The particles actually exist at many places at the same time. They sometimes behave as waves, sometimes as particles. They are non-local, and what's really bizarre, their behavior vastly depends on the presence of a conscious observer. Many mainstream physicists explain that all these strange phenomena at a quantum level by the existence of many parallel worlds at the same time. There are many different approaches to this idea, though. Some of them postulate that there are countless parallel worlds popping out into existence with every quantum uncertainty of every single particle in the universe, which happens all the time, trillions or more at a time in a millisecond. And in many of these new universes, there is a copy of ourselves, continuing with a completely independent and slightly different life. On the other hand, some approaches are more oriented towards consciousness as a deciding factor in the whole picture. There are real universes such as ours, and they are potential universes that may or may not become real. Nevertheless, the reality in which we exist is only one of those countless parallel universes. To us, all the other realities are only potential realities, but to some other conscious beings actually living in them, our reality is only a potential one. Our lives in the past or future, from the perspective outside of the space-time continuum, are actually simultaneous existences. Basically, it's just a matter of point of view, from which coordinate of the space-time we are observing an event. In that way, we could even have some lives in the future that are our previous lives, meaning the root of some events in this existence stem from those lives, or vice versa. Knowing everything we just learned, we can assume that we can change our future. If we could change our subconscious mind, if we begin living mindfully, or simply if we make a different expected decision, we make a shift in another timeline, leading to a completely different future. The previous real timeline that we were supposed to go along, our destiny, now becomes only a parallel, potential one. Another timeline becomes our reality. By the way, if we live a mindful spiritual life, the timeline will be much more pleasant and fruitful. However, as there are potentially infinite potential timelines ahead, we can be certain that we have an infinite number of possibilities in front of us. But what about the past? Can it also be changed? When we're making decisions, whether they be micro decisions or big life decisions, each time we are choosing our destiny, our most probable timeline that is stretching ahead of us. That's clear. But there is also a very interesting detail. The timeline can overlap and intersect. A decision can often be reached by several different directions from the past. Actually, every point in space-time can be reached from numerous directions, both from past and future. In other words, every single stage of our lives has many possible past states leading to it. So how can we make changes to our past? Simply by changing our present. As we're transforming ourselves now, we're transforming both our past and future. We change the entire timeline which we are in. So when we make a change to our past, we skip to another timeline. That means we shift to the memories of the timeline and embrace them as we were always living in that timeline. We are completely unaware that we were previous inhabitants of another timeline. However, in most of the cases, these changes are slight and almost unnoticeable. The memories we recall will be almost the same as before. Yet sometimes during the process of changing the timelines, some memories do remain. That may explain the well-known Mandela effect, which deals with the so-called false memories. There's one more view I want to go over. There is a more elegant and more universal solution. We live in a holographic world. Simply put, a holograph world's view indicates that the universe is a huge hologram, which is in line with some of the new scientific approaches. Namely, the holographic principle is being increasingly accepted in modern physics, especially in string theory and astrophysics, which are dealing with some crucial aspects of black holes, their event horizons, and information stored within them. The theory can also be applied to all 3D objects other than black holes. Additionally, there's a mathematical theorem called the Banachek-Tarski paradox. It's mathematically definitely proven, and it's said that given a solid ball in a three-dimensional space, there exists a decomposition of the ball into an infinite number of disjointed subsets, which can be put back together in a different way to yield two identical copies of the ball. This is a real phenomenon, and in my belief, proves the paranormal. After your energy has left the physical body, your energy can choose to stay behind and become a spirit. In this case, this theory of the ball is simple. I have a ball in my realm. A child spirit sees the ball in their realm and takes it and starts playing with it. My ball is physically still there. They just have the energy imprint of it. And in turn, this mathematical theorem may direct us to the conclusion that we do live in a holographic world, even more than the speculations and calculations on the black holes and their event horizons. In accordance with all this, we can say that each phenomenon, thing, event, or being within this universal hologram has all the information on the entire hologram. This implies that information on the whole universe, including its past and future, is embedded within us all. And that would be also applicable to reincarnation or parallel lives. So in conclusion, these concepts of parallel lives and other dimensions are indeed fascinating and could really help us in opening our minds and becoming more creative. Nevertheless, the ultimate truth is much simpler. In fact, it's the simplest thing of all. Change our general attitude to yes, we should always be open-minded and creative, but we have to live a more mindful life and to work on ourselves persistently. Most importantly, we should love ourselves and all other beings. We must not forget that we are all connected at the deepest level, and all lives that happened to us in the past or will happen in the future is being recorded on the universal imprint, which means it's going to be viewed as one pure consciousness, underlying perfect reality, God, universe, multi-universe, whatever you would like to call it, we are all one. Thank you so much for watching another spiritual learning video. Please check out the spiritual learning playlist for more. And we'll see you again soon.